Marcus had full access to payroll and accounting software, and 22 months to move $1,900,000 in our revenue into a company he owned. The only reason it stopped is that I kept a separate sales log by hand, a green spiral notebook, the same kind our mother used to keep on the kitchen counter when we were kids, the one she wrote grocery prices in before she trusted any cashier's screen. I am Clara. Marcus is my stepbrother. Our parents married when I was 9 and he was 11, and we shared a hallway, a bathroom, and a Christmas tree for a long time before we shared anything that mattered. He was the one who always knew where the cookies were hidden. I was the one who put them back so Mom would not notice. When I opened the boutique 12 years ago, my mother was the first person through the door. She walked the racks slowly, touched every hanger, and then sat in the back office and made me promise one thing. Keep your own count, Clara. Always keep your own count. People will hand you their numbers. You keep yours. She tapped a green spiral notebook on the desk between us and said, "This is how I caught your father's bookkeeper in 1987. He never thanked me for it, but the light stayed on. That notebook is sitting next to me right now. There is a coffee ring on the cover. There is a phone number for a button supplier from 2014 inside the front flap. And there is a column in my handwriting going back almost 2 years that does not match a single P&L my stepbrother ever submitted. If you have ever been the one who carried the family burden while someone else took the credit, stay with me. And if this story speaks to you, subscribe to my channel for more stories like this because family truth has a way of coming back. The first thing you need to understand about Marcus is that he was always the charming one, not the smart one, not the steady one, the charming one. At 10 years old, he could talk our father out of a punishment in under a minute. At 15, he could borrow the car without asking and come home with a story so warm and so detailed that you forgot you were angry. I remember one summer he came home at 2 in the morning with a dent on the passenger door of our father's wagon. He had a Dairy Queen bag in his hand. He held it up like a trophy. He said, "Dad, I got you the dipped cone you like." By the time our father took the cone, the dent was somehow my fault for not waking up to tell him to be careful. I did not have that gift. I had a notebook and a list and a habit of doing the dishes before anyone asked. My mother used to call me her little accountant. She did not mean it as a compliment at first. She meant I was the one keeping score in a house where no one else seemed to be paying attention. She would catch me writing down whose turn it was to take out the trash. She would shake her head and smile and say, "Clara, you cannot run a family like a ledger." I did not say what I was thinking, which was, somebody has to. When I was 12, I caught Marcus stealing $20 from my piggy bank. He did not deny it. He laughed and said, "Clara, relax. I was going to put it back." I waited a week. He did not put it back. When I told my mother, she sighed and said, "He's your brother now. Let it go." So I let it go. I let a lot of things go. I let go of the watch he borrowed for prom and never returned. I let go of the bicycle he sold to a kid down the street while I was at summer camp. I let go of the $800 he asked me for in college and called a loan and never paid back. Every time, the family said the same thing. "He's your brother. Let it go." That was the first time I saw the old pattern in a new form. Only I did not know it yet. I just knew that $20 was missing and that the family wanted me to forget about it faster than he wanted to repay it. Years passed. Our father got sick when Marcus and I were in our late 20s. I moved home for 8 months. I drove him to chemotherapy on Tuesdays and Fridays. I learned how to crush his pills into applesauce because the swallowing got hard near the end. I slept on a cot in the den so I could hear him at night when he called out. Marcus called twice. He sent flowers once and signed both our names. When the will was read, our father had left the house equally to all 3 of us, even though I had slept on a cot in the den for those 8 months. Marcus cried at the reading. He hugged the lawyer. He hugged me last. He whispered in my ear, "Dad would have wanted this," and I did not know if he meant the will or the hug. Either way, I felt my mother stiffen beside me, and I knew she was thinking about a piggy bank from 20 years earlier. I am telling you this so you understand what I walked into when I hired him. The boutique had grown. 12 years of slow, steady work, 2 locations, a small wholesale line, and finally a real back office that needed real help. My bookkeeper was retiring, Marcus had just lost his job at a logistics company. He called me on a Tuesday night and said, "Clara, I know I have not always been the brother you needed, but I am asking for a chance. I am asking you to let me earn this." He said it twice. He said it well. My husband told me not to do it. My mother, who was still living then, told me not to do it. She said, "Your brother does not change, Clara. He just changes addresses." I told her she was being unfair. I told her people grow. I told her I needed help and family was family. She looked at me for a long time, and then she said, "Fine, but keep your own count." She said it the way she had said it the first day the boutique opened. Keep your own count. So I hired him. Payroll administrator, back office, access to the accounting software, access to the bank feed, the whole back wall of the operation. I told myself I was being generous. I told myself I was being smart because nobody steals from family. I told myself a lot of things in those first weeks. For the first 8 months, the books looked clean. Marcus was on time. He answered emails. He brought me coffee on Mondays. He sat in on the Friday inventory meetings and asked decent questions. My retiring bookkeeper, Janet, said he was a fast learner. Janet was a kind woman. She wanted to retire in peace. She did not look as closely as she might have. The first red flag came in month 9. I got an email from Marcus to our IT vendor. He had CC'd me as a courtesy, the way he always did with things he wanted me to skim and approve. The email asked the vendor to switch our accounting software login to a shared credentials setup. He framed it as efficiency. He said it would let him onboard a part-time clerk faster. He said it would save us $40 a month on user seats. I almost approved it. My finger was over the reply button. Then I remembered something Janet had said when she first set up the system. Each person gets their own login, Clara, always. That is how you know who did what. That is the audit trail. I wrote back and said, "No," I said, "keep mine separate, keep yours separate. Hire the clerk on her own seat." He wrote back 2 minutes later with a smile in the email. "Of course," he said, "just trying to save you money. Smart call." I should have stopped right there. I should have called Janet. I should have called my husband. Instead, I closed the laptop and went back to the floor because a customer was waiting on a fitting and I was the only one who knew where the alterations tag was. The boutique always pulled me back to the floor. 12 years of running a small business will teach you that the urgent always beats the important. There was always a return to process, a fitting to finish, a vendor on hold online too. The audit trail was a problem for tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into 13 more months. That was red flag number 1. I let it go. Now, before I tell you about the second one, I need to tell you about the notebook. After my mother died, I cleaned out her kitchen. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of unpaid coupons and 3 pairs of broken reading glasses, I found a green spiral notebook. Not the one I had at the boutique, an older one, hers, the one she used to keep before any of us were old enough to understand money. Inside, in her tidy, slanted handwriting, were columns, dates, amounts, names, and on the 3rd page from the back, underlined twice, she had written, "Marcus borrowed $400, has not returned, 2nd time this year, do not lend again." The date was 1996. He was 16. I sat on her kitchen floor and cried for a long time, not because of the $400, because she had known. She had always known. And she had still let it go, the way she let me let it go, the way our family let everything go, because peace at the table was worth more than the truth on the page. There was a second entry, 2 pages later, in smaller handwriting. Marcus borrowed $300, said it was for textbooks, found receipts in his car for a weekend in Atlantic City. Did not mention it. He is a charmer, like his uncle. Charmers do not change. They only get better at it. I read that paragraph 3 times. My mother was not a writer. She did not waste words. When she wrote 3 sentences in a row about something, she meant every one of them. I brought the notebook home. I put it in the drawer of my own desk at the boutique, behind the staple refills, where nobody would think to look. I did not open it again for almost a year, but I knew it was there. And there were nights after the shop was closed and the lights were off, when I would put my hand on the drawer and think about my mother and her little accountant and feel something I could not yet name. It was not anger, not exactly. It was closer to a question. The question was, How many women in this family had written the same kind of sentence in the same kind of notebook and closed the drawer and never said a word out loud? Now, back to the books. The second red flag came in the third quarter of that year. Our gross margin dropped 6 points. 6 full points in a single quarter with no corresponding rise in cost of goods. I stared at the report for 10 minutes before I picked up the phone. Marcus had an answer ready. Vendor pricing shifts, he said. 2 of our fabric suppliers had raised wholesale, he said. Shipping was up, he said. He said it the way he used to say his homework was in his locker. Smooth, detailed enough to sound real. Just vague enough that you could not check it without sounding like you did not trust him. I asked for the vendor invoices. He said he would pull them by Friday. Friday came. He had a dentist appointment. Monday came. He was working on it. By the next week, he sent me a folder of invoices that did show some price increases, but nothing close to 6 points. When I asked him to walk me through the math, he laughed and said, "Clara, I love that you care, but you do not have to babysit me. I went to school for this. Sort of." He laughed again. I did not laugh. That night, after the shop closed, I sat in the back office with the door locked and pulled out my own green spiral notebook. The one I had been keeping on the floor for 12 years, every sale, every return, every cash drawer count at close, my handwriting, every page, every day. I cross-referenced it against the monthly P&L Marcus had submitted. There was a $47,000 gap, a gap I could not locate in any line item, not in returns, not in voids, not in shrinkage, not in any reasonable category. Just gone, in the space between what my floor had rung up and what his report had recorded. That was the first time I saw the old pattern in a new form, $47,000. I sat with that number for a long time. I thought about the 20 in the piggy bank when I was 12. I thought about the 400 in my mother's notebook in 1996. I thought about the 8 months on the cot in the den while Marcus sent flowers and signed my name next to his. I thought about the way he had hugged the lawyer at the will reading. I thought about how he had asked me 3 years into the boutique to co-sign on a small business loan for a side project, and how I had said no, and how he had laughed and said, "You have always been the careful one, Clara. That is why I am asking." I had taken it as a compliment at the time. Now I understood. He had been auditioning me for years. He had been measuring how careful I really was. He had decided somewhere along the way that I was not careful enough. I did not call him that night. I did not call my husband. I called nobody. I sat in the back office and I wrote in my own notebook on a fresh page the date, the amount, and one sentence. 47,000 missing this month. Cannot locate. Do not say anything yet. I underlined the last 4 words. I underlined them twice, the way my mother underlined the entry about him in 1996. I did not realize until later that I had copied her hand without meaning to. The receipt had my name on it. The story had his. I want to be honest with you. Part of me did not want it to be true. Part of me wanted there to be an explanation. He was my brother, the way the courts and the calendar said brother. He had hugged me at our father's funeral. He had stood next to me when my mother was lowered into the ground. I did not want to be the woman who had to be right about her own family. But I was not raised to look away from a column that did not add up. Over the next 3 weeks, I did something I had never done before. I went home each night, opened my laptop, and quietly read every public article I could find on small business embezzlement. I learned vocabulary I had not wanted to learn. Forensic accounting, reclassification, shell entities, single-member LLCs. I learned that the most common scheme is also the simplest. You take real revenue and you call it something else, and you send it somewhere you control. And as long as nobody is checking the source documents, the numbers look fine on paper. I did not argue about memory. I started bringing records. I went back through my notebook. 12 years of it. I was looking for older patterns, smaller gaps, anything I might have let go because I was busy on the floor. I found 3 small ones. A $2,000 gap 18 months earlier. A $900 gap a year before that. A strange month where the P&L had a category called miscellaneous consulting that I did not remember approving. Miscellaneous consulting. I went into the accounting software. my own login, the one Marcus had tried to merge. I pulled the consulting fee category and exported every transaction for the last 24 months. I printed it out, all 41 pages of it, and I took it home, and I sat at the kitchen table where my husband was reading the paper, and I laid the pages out one by one. Every consulting fee, every single one, was paid to the same single-member LLC. Different dates, different amounts, same recipient. A name I did not recognize. A name that was not on any contract I had ever signed. My husband looked at the pages. He looked at me. He said, "Clara, you need a forensic accountant. Tomorrow." I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed and I thought about my mother in 1996, writing Marcus borrowed $400 in her green spiral notebook, underlining it twice, and then closing the drawer. She had not closed the drawer because she did not see. She had closed it because she did not have the proof to do anything else. I had the proof. I had columns. I had dates. I had a category called miscellaneous consulting and 41 pages of payments to a name nobody could explain. I did not argue about memory. I brought records. Some siblings do not want fairness. They want revision. He was already, in his head, telling a story about how I was difficult, how I had always been the suspicious one, how Mom had always favored me. I knew this because Marcus had been telling that story about me for 30 years. He was just about to tell it with more money on the line. The second open loop opened the next morning. I was at home, drinking coffee, and I remembered something. 3 years before I hired Marcus, my mother had called me one evening from her kitchen. She had said, "Clara, your brother stopped by today. He was asking about your shop. He wanted to know how the books were kept, who handled them, how often you reviewed them." I told him you used a bookkeeper named Janet. I thought it was strange he asked. I told her she was being paranoid. I told her he was probably just curious. I changed the subject. We talked about her tomato plants. She died 9 months later, and I forgot the entire conversation until that morning at my kitchen table, when it came back to me with a clarity I did not want. He had been asking about my books 3 years before he ever asked me for a job. He had been studying me. He had been mapping the door before he ever knocked on it. The next morning, I called a forensic accounting firm 2 cities over. I did not use my work email. I used a personal account. I went into the parking lot of a coffee shop 2 blocks from my house, and I made the call from my car with the windows up because I wanted no chance of him walking in and hearing me. I told the receptionist I needed a confidential consultation regarding internal financial irregularities at a privately held retail company. She did not flinch. She had heard it before. The firm was called Heller & Vance. The lead partner I met with was a woman named Diane Heller. She was about 60, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She had a yellow legal pad and she did not take notes on a laptop. I liked her immediately. I told her everything, the notebook, the missing $20 when I was 12, the 8 months on the cot, the shared credentials request, the 6 points of margin, the $47,000 gap, the 41 pages of consulting fees, the name on the LLC. She listened. When I was done, she took off her reading glasses and said, "Clara, I do this work every week. I want you to hear me clearly. What you are describing is not a misunderstanding. This is a scheme. We will know within 6 weeks how big it is. Do not confront him. Do not change his access. Do not let him know anything has changed. Behave normally. Can you do that?" I said I could. I did not tell you it was easy. For the next 6 weeks, I went into the boutique every morning and I said good morning to my stepbrother. I asked about his weekend. I let him bring me coffee on Monday. I sat in the Friday inventory meeting and I let him talk about vendor pricing without challenging him. At night, I went home and I cried at the kitchen sink, with the water running so my husband would not hear, because I knew every day what was coming and I could not say a word. The caregiver's log was dated. The lies were not. In week 4, Diane called me and asked if I could come in. I went on a Thursday afternoon. I told Marcus I had a doctor's appointment. She had a folder. It was not large. It was about 1/2 inch thick. She set it between us on the table and she said, "Clara, I want to walk you through what we found." Over 22 months, $1,900,000 in product revenue had been reclassified inside the accounting software as consulting fees paid to a single-member LLC. The LLC was registered to a residential address in a town 2 hours away. The registered owner was not Marcus on paper. On paper, the owner was a man named Dennis Krell. Dennis Krell, it turned out, was Marcus's college roommate from 25 years ago. The LLC had no website, no employees, no other clients, no contracts on file with our company, and no disclosed relationship to Marcus in any of our conflict of interest records, which Marcus himself had been responsible for collecting and filing. Every transfer had a memo line. Every memo line said something professional: strategic consulting, vendor relations support, quarterly advisory, brand positioning review, the kind of phrases that look fine if you are skimming, the kind of phrases that fall apart the second somebody asks for a deliverable. There were no deliverables, not one. No emails, no reports, no meeting minutes, nothing. Diane slid the summary page across the table. One line at the bottom in bold. Total reclassified revenue, 22 months, $1,900,000. I did not cry. I did not yell. I did not feel triumph. I felt very, very tired. Diane said, "What do you want to do next?" I said, "I need to sit with this for a few days." She said, "Take a week. The numbers are not going anywhere." I went home. I told my husband. He held me on the couch and did not say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, he said, "Clara, your mother would have known what to do." I went to the boutique that night after closing, and I unlocked my desk drawer. I pulled out my mother's old green spiral notebook, the one from 1996. I opened to the page that said, "Marcus borrowed $400, has not returned, second time this year, do not lend again." I sat there in the half-dark in the back office I had built over 12 years, holding my mother's handwriting in my hand. I thought about every time the family had told me to let it go. I thought about every time I had let it go, and what it had cost me, and what it had cost her. This is the silence moment. The folder was on the desk. The forensic report was inside it. The receipts were in a banker's box on the floor next to my chair. My own notebook was open in front of me. My mother's notebook was open beside it. 2 columns of handwriting from 2 generations of the same family, both saying the same thing about the same boy, 30 years apart. I did not pick up the phone. I did not write an email. I sat in that chair for almost 2 hours, and I let myself feel every year of it. The piggy bank, the watch, the bicycle, the $800 in college, the cot in the den, the flowers signed with my name, the $400 in 1996, the miscellaneous consulting line, the boy in the kitchen and the man in the back office, the same person, finally seen all the way through. I made my decision in that chair. I did not raise my voice. I did not slam the drawer. I closed the notebook gently and put it back, because I knew I would need it again. The next morning, I called Diane. I called my attorney. We met that afternoon. My attorney was a quiet man named David Okafor. He had handled the boutique's legal work for 9 years. He read the forensic report twice, slowly. He asked Diane 2 clarifying questions. Then he looked at me and said, "Clara, here is what I recommend." He laid it out. Step 1, file an IRS referral. The $1,900,000 had been moved into Marcus's controlled LLC and almost certainly had not been reported as personal income. The IRS, he said, takes unreported income very seriously. Step 2, present the forensic report to Marcus's personal attorney by hand delivery with a settlement demand. Full repayment of $1,900,000 to the operating account within 60 days in exchange for the company not pursuing criminal charges directly. Step 3, terminate his employment immediately upon his receipt of the report. Step 4, change every credential, lock, and bank authorization the same hour. He asked me if I understood. I said I did. He asked if I wanted to think about it overnight. I said no. I said, "I have been thinking about this since I was 12. He filed the IRS referral that afternoon. 3 days later, the forensic report was hand-delivered to Marcus's attorney's office. I was not in the room, by choice. David and Diane were in the room. Marcus arrived in a navy blazer. He had brought a notebook of his own, a black leather one, the kind a man brings to a meeting when he wants to look like a professional. He sat down. He smiled at Diane the way he used to smile at our father's lawyer at the will reading. He said, "I am happy to clear this up." He even joked. He said, "I have been waiting for someone to take a closer look." There were a lot of moving parts on my side. Some of these consulting arrangements were complicated. He said it the way he said his homework was in his locker 3 decades earlier. I was not in the room, but David told me later that everyone at the table caught the rehearsal in his voice. Diane slid the forensic report across the table. The summary page on top, one line at the bottom in bold. Marcus looked at the total. He did not speak for almost a full minute. David told me later that the silence was the longest he had ever sat through. Marcus's hand went to his mouth. He turned the page. He turned it back. He looked at the summary line again, as if rereading it would change the number. Then he said one sentence. Just one. He said, "My sister did this." David said, "Your sister hired professionals. The numbers did this." Marcus's attorney asked for a recess. They took 20 minutes in the hallway. When they came back, Marcus's attorney said his client was prepared to discuss a resolution. Within 60 days, Marcus signed the settlement agreement. Full repayment of $1,800,000 to the operating account, personal guarantee, a schedule of liquidations of his assets, including a vacation property I had not known he owned, including a vehicle I had helped him pick out 3 years ago when he said he was getting back on his feet. The IRS referral, separately, would run its own course. That part was not mine to control anymore. He never repaid me for the $20 from the piggy bank. I do not expect him to. The repayment of $1,900,000 came in 7 installments, with a personal guarantee backing the rest. The $20 came in 0. That is the part of the math that does not balance and the part that never will. The money came back to the company in tranches over the next year. Some of it was a wire. Some of it was the proceeds from a property sale. Some of it was a check from his attorney's escrow. Every time a deposit hit, my husband would look at me at the dinner table and quietly say, "That one is in." I would nod. I did not celebrate. I did not feel victorious. I want to be clear about that. I felt the way you feel after you have closed a long account at a hospital. Relieved, tired, aware that something has ended that you cannot bring back, even though you would not have brought it back the way it was. Marcus did not call me. Not once. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Not to ask how I was. Through his attorney, he requested that the family be told a vague version. He wanted the cousins and the aunts to be told that there had been a quote disagreement about the books, unquote. His attorney said it was important for his reputation in the family. David asked me what I wanted to say. I thought about it for 2 days. I sent one email to the 7 people in our extended family who actually mattered to me. I did not write a long email. I wrote 4 sentences. Marcus moved $1,900,000 of company revenue into a company he controlled over 22 months. A forensic firm documented every transfer. He has signed a settlement to repay it. I am telling you because you have asked me, over the years, to be patient with him, and I want you to understand why I cannot anymore. 3 of the 7 called me within an hour. 2 of them apologized. One of them, my Aunt Lillian, said, "Your mother told me about Marcus and the $400 in 1996. I never forgot it. Clara, your mother would be proud of you." I had to put the phone down after that one. A few hours later, my cousin Ben called. He was older than both of us by a decade. He had been at every Thanksgiving I could remember. He said, "Clara, I have to tell you something. Marcus called me last year and tried to borrow $40,000 for a real estate deal. I said no. He told me you would never have to know. I figured it was none of my business at the time. I am sorry I did not call you." I told him it was all right. I told him my mother had spent 30 years not telling each other things in this family, and that I was done with that part. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Your mother would say the same thing today." We hung up. I cried at the kitchen sink for 10 minutes, and then I made dinner. I will tell you what I learned. I learned that the old patterns do not stop. They just put on better clothes. The boy who took $20 from a piggy bank does not become a man who stops taking. He becomes a man who learns the word reclassification. I learned that family is not a defense against fraud. It is sometimes the cover for it. The same words that asked me to let it go when I was 12 were the words that would have asked me to let it go at 43 if I had not kept my own count. I learned that the green spiral notebook in my apron pocket was worth more than every degree on every wall of every accountant in that boutique. Not because it was sophisticated, because it was mine, because nobody else could touch it, because it was the one set of numbers in the building that did not pass through my stepbrother's hands. I learned that my mother knew this 30 years before I did. She tried to tell me. I did not understand until I held her old notebook in my hand at midnight in the back office with the boy from her kitchen table, now a man who had moved $1,900,000 away from the family that fed him. I do not see Marcus anymore. He moved out of state after the property sale. He sends a Christmas card every year, the same kind, a generic photograph of a snowy road. He does not sign it from the heart. He signs it Marcus, just the name. I keep them in a drawer. I am not sure why. Maybe because my mother kept hers. Maybe because one day, somebody in this family, a niece I have not met yet, will open a drawer in a house I no longer live in and find a small stack of cards from a man she barely heard about, and ask the right question of the right woman, and finally hear the answer. The boutique is fine. Better than fine. I hired a real CFO, a woman named Priya, who came out of a regional bank and who, on her first day, walked into the back office with her own green spiral notebook. I laughed out loud when I saw it. She looked at me strange. I told her the story. She said, "My mother told me the same thing." I think a lot of mothers told a lot of daughters the same thing. The notebook is not really about the bookkeeping. It is about not being talked out of what you saw with your own eyes. It is about having a place that nobody else has the password to. It is about giving your future self a witness in case the people around you decide to forget what they know. Priya runs the back office now the way I always wanted it run. 2-person sign-off on every consulting agreement. A monthly reconciliation between the floor sales log and the P&L. A quarterly third-party review by a small CPA firm with no ties to anyone in the family. None of this is fancy. None of this would have stopped a determined criminal forever. But it would have stopped Marcus, because Marcus needed a system where one person held the keys, and there is no longer a position in this company where that is possible. We removed the door he walked through. We did not install a fancier door. We just installed a second person on the other side of it. Some nights I close the shop alone. I lock the front door. I turn off the lights one row at a time. I sit in the back office for a few minutes before I leave. I put my hand on the desk drawer where my mother's notebook is and where my own notebook is, and I think about a 12-year-old girl who told her mother about a missing $20 and was told to let it go. I want to say something to that girl. I want to tell her that one day she will not let it go. That one day she will keep her own count, page after page, year after year, and that the page will hold up in a room full of attorneys, and that her mother, somewhere, will know. I grieve the brother I did not have. I will probably grieve him the rest of my life. There was a version of Marcus in some other family, in some other story, who could have walked into that boutique and been a real partner. I do not know that man. I have never met him. The man I met took our parents' grief and turned it into a credit line. I am finally free of waiting for him to be different. That is the part I did not expect. The freedom is not in the money coming back. The money was always going to come back because Diane was good at her job and David was patient and the documents existed. The freedom is in not waking up at 4 a.m. anymore, wondering what version of him I am going to get that day. The receipt had my name on it. The story has mine now too. For anyone watching, if you have ever handed off the books to a family member, ask yourself one question tonight. Are you keeping your own count? Not because you do not trust them, because trust without a count is not trust. It is hope. And hope does not hold up in an attorney's office. If you have your own green spiral notebook, in any form, on any shelf, in any pocket, hold on to it. Write in it. Date the pages. Do not throw it away because someone tells you it is unnecessary. The day you need it, you will need it the way I needed mine. I want to leave you with one more thing. About 4 months after the settlement, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Marcus. From his daughter, my niece, who is 14. Her handwriting was careful. She wrote, "Aunt Clara, my mom told me what happened. I do not totally understand it. I just want you to know I do not think you are a bad person. My grandma used to tell me you were the steady one. She said the family needed at least one steady one. I am keeping a notebook now, too. I do not know what for yet. I just thought you would like to know." I read that letter 3 times, and then I put it in the drawer next to my mother's. 3 notebooks now, in 3 generations. I do not know what my niece will use hers for. I hope she never has to use it the way I used mine. But if she does, she will know how. The hand has been passed. And if stories like this remind you that blood does not excuse betrayal, subscribe to my channel for more stories. Because sometimes peace begins when the truth is finally spoken. For anyone who has ever handed off the books to a family member, did you keep your own count of what was coming in, or did you trust the reports you were handed? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. I will be here. I am Clara. The notebook is closed for tonight. The drawer is locked, the lights are off, and for the first time in a long time, the count is even.